Teddy Roosevelt said the famous phrase, "Speak softly and carry a big stick," in 1901. He had no idea that one day, the stick would come in the form of chemical injections, psychic attacks, and even pets. Roosevelt's big stick diplomacy is easy to see in military history. Most of the time, world leaders lead with talk, but it helps to have a strong arsenal in your back pocket. The military-industrial complex came up with new ideas during times like World War II and the Cold War. In the modern era of combat, military leaders have tried some risky tactics in order to stay on the cutting edge of technology for war. Even the smartest people on Earth with the biggest war chests couldn't save these 10 experiments from being thrown out. Number 10. The Camel Core of the US. No, this wasn't a plan to make enemy soldiers smoke cigarettes without filters. In 1856, when Jefferson Davis was Secretary of War, he brought in a lot of camels from Africa and Turkey. He called them ships of the desert because he thought that in the harsh, dry land, camels would be better than horses and mules. Davis's claim was even backed up by tests that went well. The Shield Amendment was put into law by Congress in 1855. This set aside $30,000, more than $1 million today, to buy camels. People and soldiers were trained on the animals for months. By 1857, there were 70 camels in the Camel Corps. By 1861, Congress was focused on the American Civil War, so the Great Camel Experiment was stopped. By 1864, the last of the camels had been sold at an auction for $1,945. Number 9. Project Iceworm. During the Cold War, the threat of nuclear war seemed more real than at any other time in history. The US and the USSR spent years looking in every nook and cranny for something that would give them an advantage over the other superpower. In 1958, the US Army came up with a plan to hide many ballistic missiles under Greenland's ice caps. These missiles were supposed to be pointed at the USSR in case the Soviets used nuclear weapons. So, you don't think this was just stuck on a piece of paper? The Army built a test ice base called Camp Century. This was a complicated, nuclear-powered network of icy underground tunnels, labs, and rooms for more than 100 people to sleep in. Even a hospital and a movie theater were part of the building. No matter how impressive this engineering feat was, it couldn't beat the power of nature. 3 years after Project Iceworm started, the structure of the building started to fall apart. Camp Century started to fall apart. The nuclear reactor was taken out by 1964, and the whole project was scrapped in 1966. Number 8. The Edgewood Arsenal drug experiments. This is another example of how the Cold War caused the military to do strange things. At Edgewood Arsenal, the US military tested chemical weapons on American troops for nearly 20 years. Edgewood was a research center in the middle of nowhere near the Chesapeake Bay. More than 5,000 soldiers were exposed to many different, non-lethal incapacitating agents for more than 20 years. From marijuana to BZ, these agents ranged in how dangerous they were. BZ was a chemical that would disrupt the high integrative functions of memory, problem-solving, attention, and understanding. A fairly high dose causes toxic delirium, which makes it impossible for the person to do any military task. Few useful results came from these years of tests. The effects were, of course, terrible for the people who took part in the tests. When Congress found out about the experiments at Edgewood Arsenal, they held a hearing and put an end to the cruel project in 1975. Number 7. The Peacekeeper Rail Garrison. The Peacekeeper Rail Garrison is another thing left over from the Cold War that was never used. It was 1986, which was more than a decade after the experiments at Edgewood Arsenal stopped. Between the US and the USSR, there was still a chance of a nuclear war. President Ronald Reagan gave the go-ahead for a rail system to be built so that Peacekeeper ballistic missiles can be moved and launched. He basically wanted to put nuclear weapons on trains. Each train was to have 2 locomotives, 2 security cars, a launch control car, 2 missile launch cars, a maintenance car, and several other cars. Westinghouse was given a $167 million contract in May 1988 to work on making a missile launch car. Rockwell International was given a contract worth $162 million to make the control and security cars. As the Cold War calmed down, the project was cancelled in 1991. One prototype car is all that is left of the rail garrison. It is on display at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. Number 6. Gay bomb. The gay bomb was not a bomb that was meant to hurt gay people. No, this was meant to use a chemical compound made in a lab to turn the enemy gay. In 1994, the Wright Laboratory in Ohio, which was run by the Air Force, was researching non-lethal weapons that could be used by the military. The name of the project was not the gay bomb. Instead, they chose harassing, annoying, and bad guy identification chemicals. The goal was to find substances that would make it harder for an enemy to fight. Wright Laboratory even sent a proposal to the Pentagon asking for a research grant of $7.5 million. The money was used to study a wide range of chemicals that were meant to do things like attract stinging insects, make enemy soldiers fart and have bad breath, or turn them gay with a specially made aphrodisiac. Wright Laboratory's proposal said, strong aphrodisiacs would be an unpleasant but non-lethal example, especially if the chemical also made people act gay. The press was given information about the project. The project didn't get any money, so the gay bomb went away. Number 5. Flying saucer. At the height of the Cold War, the US was worried that Russian ballistic missiles could target US airfields, making American air combat useless. This made the Pentagon want to make an airplane that can take off from a vertical position. Project 1794 was given the go-ahead in 1956. The Pentagon hired Avro Aircraft, a Canadian company, to make the device. Avro's idea of what the ship could do was a bit too optimistic. They said that the craft could fly at 2,600 miles per hour and hover at a height of 100,000 feet. The good news is that the Avro plane did hover, at about 3 feet above the ground, 1 meter. It also flew, at about 35 miles an hour, 56 kilometers per hour. All of this for the low price of $3,168,000, which is equivalent to $26.6 million on the market today. The price was too high, so the project was cancelled in 1961, and a year later, the Canadian company went out of business. One of the Avrocar prototypes is now on display at the U.S. Air Force National Museum in Dayton, Ohio. A second model went to the U.S. Army Transportation Museum at Fort Eustis, Virginia. Number 4. Bat bombs. Lytle S. Adams, a dentist from Pennsylvania, called the White House on January 12, 1942, with a plan to change the course of World War II. Adams thought that putting small bombs on bats would give the United States the edge it needed to deal with the threat from Axis. Adams's plan said, think of thousands of fires starting at the same time in a 40-mile wide, 64-kilometer wide, circle for every bomb dropped. Japan could have been badly hurt, but only a few people died. The bat bomb had a lot of problems, but that's how it is with all good plans. During testing, a few of the bats with bombs on them were accidentally set free, destroying a hangar and the car of a general. After the accident, the U.S. Marine Corps took over the program in December 1943. After 30 demos and spending $2 million, the project was scrapped. Lytle Adams was not one to give up easily, so he worked on making machines that sell fried chicken. They flew just as well as the bats. Number 3. Rays of pain. This one is a bit more recent. Around the middle of the 2000s, the Department of Defense created an Active Denial System, or ADS. The ADS was a non-lethal directed energy weapon that could shoot a beam of millimeter waves the size of a person up to 3,280 feet, 100 meters, away. In essence, it was a heat ray that was meant to cause pain right away and get people to move on. At best, testing for the device was all over the place. After a 4-second ADS blast burned an airman in 2007, the Air Force released a report with a lot of redactions. When the same thing was shown to reporters, the results were different. Due to the rain, the pain ray turned into a nice, warm feeling. The ADS was meant to be used in prisons, at the border between the US and Mexico, and in the war in Afghanistan. Each time, the idea was turned down. Number 2. The Stargate Project. This Stargate is not the same as the popular sci-fi movies or TV shows, and it may be even less based in reality. In a move that could only have happened during the Cold War, the CIA started studying how to use extrasensory perception, ESP, and psychokinesis, moving things with your mind, for spying. In 1972, a secret report said that the Soviet Union was spending a lot of money to study psychic abilities and how they could be used in the military. Because the CIA didn't want the Russians to get there first, they started to pay for their own research. The research became the responsibility of the Stanford Research Institute in California. Project Stargate was the name for the study. One of the psychics, who was known as a remote viewer, helped the CIA with 450 missions. Even Uri Geller, who claims to be a psychic and can bend spoons, was called in to help. In a report by the American Institutes for Research, it was said that remote viewing had not been shown to work by a psychic mechanism and that it should not be used operationally. Project Stargate was killed by the report. Number 1. Kitty Spies. Operation Acoustic Kitty sounds like a folk trio that is on the cutting edge. In fact, it was part of a plan by the CIA in the 1960s to use non-human agents for spying. The first mistake might have been thinking that cats would help. It's easy to see why Acoustic Kitty was done off the books. Victor Marchetti, who used to work as the CIA director's assistant, said that the process was cruel to the chosen cats. They cut the cat open, put batteries in him, and wired him up. They made something awful. At the end of the day, the first Acoustic Kitty cost about $20 million. On its first mission, the cat was hit by a car and killed before it could reach its goal. By 1967, the CIA had added the project to its pile of failed plans. NSA employee Jeffrey Richelson said this about the program's potential: "I don't know how long the cat would have lived after the operation even if it hadn't been run over." So, guys, that was it for this video. What did you think about the video? Let us know in the comments section below. If you are new to our channel, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell to get notified about our latest videos. Thanks for watching.